Well, great. Let's go ahead and get the presentation started. Thank you very much for joining our webinar series. I know that several of you have signed up for a number of our presentations, and we appreciate the repeat visitors as well as those that are new or specifically focused in on this particular area. Presentation today is on another area of NIST 800-171 compliance and some operational tools to help you meet and complete your system security plan. I'm Tom Leahy. I am the SVP of Sales and Business Development with SureShield. I've been in the risk and compliance and safety areas for close to 30 years, and I have helping me behind the scenes two of my colleagues, Sanjay Kumar and Chandi Bilagu, who are also will help answer any questions that you may have along the way. And as I mentioned, today's session, or this particular session, is focused around tools to help you meet your system security plan requirements. Just the agenda, we've done the introduction. We'll talk a little bit about the requirements. And again, for those of you who are here, a bit of this data is redundant in nature, but never hurts to reinforce what is going to be required. And then we're going to focus in specifically on some of the requirements of the system security plan, what that is, what you need to do, and then highlight some other tools provided by SureShield that can help in components of this process as well. We actually have a couple of different ways to assist you in making sure that everything is complete, but I'm going to focus in on one particular offering that is a component that helps you in completing and indicating that you've implemented components of your system security plan. We'll then get into a brief demonstration of that, show you some tools that can help you with that. We'll do a brief product demonstration. We'll open it up for questions. And then, as well as we've offered before, we will offer you the opportunity to trial this particular application. For those, again, of you who may have been in other sessions and indicated that you were interested in utilizing the tools, please note that the invite that you will receive will open it up for the product offerings that you're interested in. Our SureShield tools are a platform, and it allows us to activate different types of modules based upon our users' needs and preferences. So if you've opted, for instance, to take advantage of utilizing the ComplyShield tool from one of our session yesterday, or our HackShield tool from our session earlier this morning, then you will also have the same access to the product that I'm going to show you a little bit later called Security Shield. So again, and for those who are new to us, you'll have the opportunity to turn this on or any other application as well. So I'll go over this briefly. Again, a lot of us are aware of the issues related to compliance with the DoD and requirements for anyone that's in the Defense Industrial Base who are providers in that base. Currently, if you are working on a new contract or an existing contract that's being modified, you're required to not only complete a NIST assessment, but submit your scores on that assessment to the SPRS, the Supplier Performance Risk System. As an adjunct to that, you are required to also provide your system security plan and your plan of action and milestones. And again, as we talked about earlier, a subset of that, and a very important subset of that, is making sure that you have the proper tools in place to assure protection of CUI data. It affects over 300,000 providers, as we know today. Coming on the heels of this, as we know, is Cmmc, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification. It was put in place and is actually in the throes of being implemented right now. Because there were and continue to be some issues with the NIST 800-171 process. And the primary issue with that is that the NIST 800-171 is a self-assessment process. It is up to you to complete the audit, to submit your scores, submit your system security plan, and indicate that you're in compliance. The CMMC will now have a third party that you will need to get audited against to validate that compliance. And again, the reason for that was there were issues where providers had indicated compliance and then got hacked, and came to find that they actually were not necessarily following all those practices. So what's on the throes of this is the new auditing process that will come. There's a lot of similarities between these processes, as we've pointed out before. NIST 800-171 is actually a number of the controls are a subset of CMMC. And as you know, CMMC has quote unquote different levels from level 1 to level 5 of compliance. And those levels are dependent, are kind of more dependent upon the nature of the sensitive data that you will be dealing with. So that will require a third-party assessment. They've already put third-party accrediting organizations into place. They're called C3PAOs. And today there's 20. Actually, as of today, there's probably more than that because there's a number of organizations that are going through getting the authorization to become an accredited company. So specifically, what we're going to highlight today is issues around the system security plan. What is that? How does that complement the NIST assessment? What's required as part of that? And then we'll go into some tools that can help you in meeting all the requirements of that particular plan. So the SSP is fundamentally an overview document that identifies the functions and features of an organization's systems, including all its hardware and software. So basically looking at the schematics of that organization, and then what are the practices that you have in place to assure the protection of that data. As we mentioned, it defines the security measures that have been or will be put into place. So as part of submitting that, if you have not implemented it, that is part of your, what we would call the POAM that is going to be provided as well, that says if something isn't in place, when it's going to be in place, how you're going to put that in place, what is going to be the timeline for you putting that in place. It also outlines things you're going to do to train folks within your environment to make sure the data is getting protected. It also, of course, it details processes for auditing and maintaining the system that has to be provided, and how you plan to respond to incidents if you do have incidents. And then it's basically a summary of security practice and policies to help the DoD be assured that you're taking on the proper data security measures. And it is a condition of awarding of any contracts today and into the future. So what is part of a comprehensive system security plan? It requires the organization, first of all, to identify the assets, the hardware and software assets in their environment. It requires you to develop and submit an IT schema, kind of how your systems are set up within your environment. It requires the conduction of an IT vulnerability scan to identify areas for security risk. And I will highlight that to you as when I show you a template of the system security plan. And what we're going to focus on today is a little bit of around tools that can help you demonstrate that, and actually also provide you evidence of proof of evidence that you're doing that. And then also remediation and planned remediation timelines to properly complete these. Again, falling back into components of the SSP, as well as the POAM. And improper or ineffective plans can actually jeopardize the awarding of new contracts, and can even jeopardize the continued award for existing contracts. So it's important that when these are done, they're done correctly. Also, that you have the proper tools in place and supporting evidence to indicate that you are doing as such. So before I go into that, again, we like to at least get a little sense of the audience. And I want to poll some of the individuals, because depending upon the companies that we have here, you may or may not be doing this yourself. You may be outsourcing it. So I just wanted to ask a couple questions. First of all, around, are you aware, or do you know if your organization does regular vulnerability scans? And I'll open that up to the group. Just give you about 10, 15 seconds to go ahead and answer those questions. And then we'll go ahead and end the poll. And actually, kind of interesting, it's about a 50-50. Well, it's actually changed just briefly with the folks that we have on. That about 63% of you are saying that you're not doing these particular scans. So I'm assuming in that case, perhaps you are outsourcing that to someone else. So let me just ask that particular question. And I have a typo, I believe, on my poll, but the question is, if you're doing scans, are they done by internal personnel or outsourced to a third party? And that will help formulate, even with the use of whether you may want to utilize the scanning tools provided by us. All right, and it looks like about the same. We got about 50% of the group that does it internally, and it looks like actually another 50% that aren't sure even how that's done. So just as a note for those who are on here, if you're unsure, keep in mind this particular solution, the Security Shield solution, is often and typically utilized by folks in your IT department. It's a continuous vulnerability scanning tool and helps you identify remediation gaps, areas of vulnerabilities and remediation issues within there. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide and briefly talk a little bit about what the Security Shield does. It's a web-enabled tool that actually helps scan and identify all security vulnerabilities, that helps prioritize risk, creates remediation guidance, and I'm going to show this to you, identifies your highest areas of risk. And it's a continuous monitoring tool, which is actually a critical component of completing your SSP. So I'm actually, before I go into the demonstration, for those of you that were in attendance at some of our other presentations, as you know, our Comply Shield solution not only helps you do your NIST assessment and your CMMC assessment, it also puts together all of the information that is needed for conducting your plan of action and milestone report. And it also outputs the system security plan. So I've actually pulled up a template of this to give you a sense of what's in here. And there's a variety of different questions that have to be, first of all, indicated whether they have been implemented or not. And if they haven't been implemented, they'll have to give you the rationale for why they haven't been implemented. If they're planned to be implemented, then they need to be part of that POAM. And I just wanted to highlight, as we go into talking about the Security Shield solution, where this falls into the overall system security plan. So first of all, there's a lot of different questions and a lot of different areas, as we talked about, that will have to be submitted as part of this process. But in the areas of risk assessment, you can see the questions are Do you scan for vulnerabilities in your organization's systems and applications periodically? And when vulnerabilities affecting those systems are identified, are you remediating those? Right? And so if you're answering those that are implemented, you should and need to have backup documentation and proof to support that. And that's what the Security Shield application does. So I'm going to step out of this for a second. And Chandi, or can you just indicate to me whether you're able to see the Sure Shield?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in our, for those of you that have attended other meetings, I'm back in our dashboard area. And I'm in this organization called Stanley Aeronautics. This particular demonstration site has, as we talked about before, our compliance audit tools in place. But you'll also notice in these tiles that it's also indicating we're running what we call the Sure Shield application in this environment. And it's pointing out to me those areas within the environment that have been scanned and identified as having issues. And it really helps in the folks that are using this segment this data in any way. Ultimately, a vulnerability is a vulnerability, but that vulnerability can be on a host asset, it can be on a software asset, it can be overall vulnerabilities that allow you to just go in, and then there's remediation actions that can be taken place. And a remediation may take care of an issue that's on a software asset and on a host asset. But if I were to click into this host asset, I just want to give you a sense of what the output is that is provided within this environment. So again, for those of you who have attended, it's very easy to filter down. Because I clicked on this, it's showing me all the 27 different areas of issues that I have. I'm going to just go down to an area that points to some criticality issues, okay? And again, it helps people that are addressing and remediating these issues very quickly get to the information that they need to get to. So if I were to click into here right now and click on my high vulnerability areas, you'll see it will show me kind of the IPs that those are on, how many are identified within those areas. And if I were to click into this, it will actually take me in to kind of a dashboard view again. And one thing to point out is, things like vulnerability assessments and scans and all are not one-time things. They need to be done on a continuous basis. So what you'll note here is within this particular environment, the different scans that have been run at different times and what the outputs or either the areas of improvement or non-improvement have been in that. So it's giving me kind of a dashboard view. It's showing me within here the services that are running on this particular asset. It's showing me the installed applications that are on that asset. And then it's showing me the vulnerabilities that are within that environment. And most importantly, it's actually giving me remediation guidance and information on how to go ahead and fix these issues. So in our case, we don't just tell you what the problem is, we tell you how to resolve the problem, how to fix the problem. And when those problems are fixed, if you were to run those scans again, you're going to see that your overall risk profile and performance will be much more improved. I'm going to clear out of here for a second and just, again, give you a brief overview of how this all gets set up. Again, if you are not necessarily the right person for doing this, we'd encourage you to talk to folks in IT who may be doing this, because any organization that's running with any kind of computer assets within them should be running and doing regular vulnerability scans and remediation processes. So if you're not aware, you just may not be aware yourself, I can almost 100% assure you there's someone within your organization that's doing it. If you're a smaller organization that's outsourced this to an IT provider, they may be the ones who are doing it for you. If you're an internal, it's someone within your organization that's doing this. So just to show a little bit how this works, as I mentioned, this is a web-enabled system. It actually allows you to do scanning, what we would call within and outside. And I do also want to point out to you that if you are using third parties, or there's a different type of tool that's being run, we leverage what we call one of the top tier vulnerability scanning utilities through a company called Rapid7. We have actually just enhanced on top of Rapid7 by web enabling it and giving you more output and specific action related items off of that. But if your organization is using a different tool, we do provide you the ability to actually upload those results so that you can get access and benefit out of the types of reports that will come out of here that I'll show you briefly. So basically, if someone were going to activate this, and for those of you that may be interested in a trial, this will be one of the first processes you'll do. You'll actually go into what we call the scanner management process. There'll be a utility that you will download that will actually go out. It needs to sit on a Windows machine, and then it will go out and identify all the different assets in your environment. Now, again, that's an important item for the system security plan, because part of what you need to provide is a schematic and an identification of all the hardware and software assets in your environment. This particular tool will do that for you, first of all. And then when you want to go up and set up, you have a variety of different ways in which you can configure your scans. If you don't want to do everything at once, you can break down different components. You can give it a name, for instance, a description of that scan you're doing. And then within that environment, you can determine what is a scheduling of that. You know, not everyone does what I would call continuous 24-hour, but they may want to do it once a day, once a month, once every 2 hours. You have complete and total control over the timing and when that is done. Right. So if I had scheduled this, I can schedule my repeat times for this. And keep in mind, if you are making changes and doing remediations, that will impact the results that you see. Lastly, you kind of go into identifying those hosts where you can bring them over. So this is showing me all the hosts that are available. And then I can just basically drag and drop and include the ones that I want in this particular environment. And you can set up multiple configurations multiple times if you want to run them on different areas within your environment. And then lastly, there's even some advanced configuration components that would allow you to do things like, once you've run them, send out specific reports to different individuals within an organization. So if I wanted to make sure that I got an executive summary report or a vulnerability report or the top threats within my organization, once they're run, you can schedule to have those pushed out to critical people within your organization. So that is the setup process. And once a scan is run, as I pointed out, when you're looking in the dashboard areas, you can see where it will show you where problems exist. And then at any given point in time, you can actually go in and run your reports on this information. And we provide, again, a variety of different reports to help you in this process. So you have things like top remediation reports. And these are helpful because, again, an organization can't necessarily address every single issue that's going on, but you want to have a way to, I would say, cut through the weeds, the haystack, to get to the most important areas within your group. So this type of report is a top remediation report that will show you where the most critical issues are, what the solutions would be. That, for instance, if I applied 20 remediations to 23 hosts, I'm actually going to remediate almost 92% of the vulnerabilities I have, and significantly lower my risk status, right? And it will even show you over time how things have improved over time with those types of tools. And again, these are at that point in time. If you were to have run a scan tomorrow, it will either we'll take that information. If there's been new vulnerabilities entered into the environment, it will go ahead and identify those issues as well. You have tools like your recommended remediations for vulnerable third-party scans. You have security risk evaluations that you can do. This is a nice executive summary report, for instance, that can be, again, if you're people that are responsible for taking action and doing these, they're great reports and things that can be shared with executive management that give a complete oversight as to a summary of where you are and where you stand today. So you get a summary on where the problems may lie, what hosts have the highest severities, what vulnerabilities are the highest. They'll show you a trend on how you're doing over the last 12 months, a security posture analysis. Again, we've introduced a lot of different, what we would call security scoring ratings to help you understand what are areas of greater criticality than others. So you have all that data, again, at basically the touch of a button. So that is, again, in more of a general summary, our Security Shield solution. And what organizations that are using this find is it doesn't require people to come out on site. It doesn't require heavy loading of, from an implementation standpoint. It's a utility that's web enabled that can be launched, and particularly in days today with people doing a lot of remote work, you can actually work with this tool remotely to get that information. It certainly will help identify where you may have holes, and those are very critical for, one, improving your NIST assessment and later your CMMC related likelihood of passing audit and accreditation, but helps you identify very quickly any vulnerabilities you may have in your environment, the criticality of those vulnerabilities to really help protect the data that you are entrusted with. So it allows you to do that in a very easy and simple fashion. It helps leverage remediation guidance. Again, as we mentioned, we don't only tell you where the problems are, we tell you how to fix the problems, and we show you the effects of fixing those problems. We even give you, in organizations that we work with, estimated resource expenditures, meaning time it will take to fix those issues as well. Because again, not everything can necessarily be attacked at once. So it helps you prioritize what's going perhaps be the most important to focus on, and the timing it will take, and can help, I would say, support to management the rationale and reason for why you are doing and taking the actions that you have. And again, getting back to the system security plan, it provides supporting documentation of you showing that you are actually putting these things in place. But more important than just showing that you're putting them in place, having a regular, continuous process for providing proper security oversight within your organization, which is going to help you and the government as they begin evaluating you for new contracts or renewing existing contracts, assure that you're going to continue to secure that business, as well as make sure that you're doing the things to protect this very sensitive data and making sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands of the wrong individuals from a national security perspective. So with that, I'm going to conclude the presentation. You will, as I mentioned before, you will receive this particular presentation update as well as access to the webinar recorded session itself. I'm going to take a minute to, again, as we've done before, for those of you that think you might want to trial the software, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll and let you indicate whether there is an interest in utilizing a trial version of this. And with that follow-up, we will go ahead and send out, if you've already signed up for other SureShield applications, it will just be added to your existing environment if you've received that email. If you're new to this, you will get a separate email that will be sent out to you and giving you access to start that particular trial. You can, of course, also reach us at support@sureshield.com once you receive this, if you need some help on launching this and getting it going. Just a note, in our trial version, Chandi, chime in here for me. I believe it gives them the ability to scan 10 assets, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we're not open, the system can go out and go into anything. The trial version allows you to sample it on a sample of assets that you choose at your discretion and run those scans and get all the output that we've just demonstrated to you. Should you be interested in implementing this, throughout your environment, from a costing perspective, it's cost based upon the number of assets in your environment. And we also, for those of you that are interested in multiple modules, we actually have some bundling. We do, because things like the Hack Shield, which we presented earlier, the Comply Shield, and Security Shield all have a lot of commonality amongst them in terms of how they interact with one another. And we do offer some bundled pricing for those that are utilizing more of those. So I've got the names of the folks that have indicated that they would like to receive a free trial of this, and we will go ahead and make sure that you're informed of access to that. It should be out later on today. So I'm going to end that polling and open it up to any questions that we may have. So for those of you who are still with us, there's an area for Q&A. I believe Chandi has gone ahead and begun to answer some of those questions. And let me see if there's, and again, if for the remaining folks that are on the presentation, if you have any questions, please go to the Q&A and input them. Now there is a question from Daniel asking, is there some type of clarity about the frequency of scans required by CMMC?
Okay, I can take that.
Sure.
So the reality of the situation is every day there are 40 to 50 new vulnerabilities identified in the most commonly used softwares in the industry. So it's required to basically stay on top, because any vulnerability, by the time it is reported, it's already exploitable by a lot of people. So you need to be on top of it. So we recommend at least a weekly scan, but that also means that you are fixing the problems that are found every time you scan. So in the initial days, it may take some time for you to actually bring the baseline to a more manageable level. So if there is a cycle of scanning and then fixing and then scan to verify the fixes and identify new stuff, then once you get into that routine, a weekly scan is very helpful. But initially, maybe it will take a month to basically bring the baseline to a manageable level.
Yeah, good. And just to add on that, as Chandi was saying, if you haven't been doing this yourself or you haven't been doing it for a while, that first process, you may have a lot to digest. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's things that are going on. But once you've digested that and have taken some action on the remediations and get into more of a flow, because the more frequently you do it and address the issues that are in there, the more secure you're going to be and the less remediations you're going to have to do. And an area, like you said, around a weekly, once you get into that flow, would probably be a good flow process once you have that going. But there is no specific guidance on how often it should be done by CMMC, at least not yet. That may change. But as he was mentioning, as you know, I mean, we see it every day on our computers and on new information that's pushed out about new vulnerabilities that have been introduced, new hacks that have happened. Of course, we just recently had the one with the gas pipelines, as you know. So it is best to have a process in place that's somewhat, I would say, relatively continuous, because the longer you're not doing that, the longer more vulnerabilities are being introduced into the environment. So thanks for that question, Daniel. I'll open it up for any more, and if not, we'll wait just another minute or two here. If not, then we'll go ahead and close the session. Again, for those of you who have indicated your desire to trial the software, we will get that set up for you, either by adding it to the existing platform for other products that you showed interest in, or receiving a new message. And again, I would like to reiterate to the folks here who perhaps been on some of our other presentations, or new folks, please just make sure that you check your spam folders if you haven't received a message from us later today or early tomorrow. Occasionally, if there are new pushes, sometimes the first time that information can go into a spam folder. And if so, you'll find it there and allow you to get in and access the information that you want. But, and then also I would just say, once you've done that, mark it as not spam so that you don't run into that type of issue in the future. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close. And actually, I have another individual that just is just chatting with us. I'll reply to you, Clay. He's just saying that he missed yesterday's presentation, but never saw an email. Got an email saying, "Sorry, I missed it." Oh, okay. Well, I apologize for that. It may have been that you had left before, but you should have access to all the same data. And we have someone who's going to go ahead and take care of that for you, Clay. So with that, again, if there are no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Again, thank you all for joining and participating in this. And we hope we'll have an opportunity to work with you and service you and provide you some things that help you continuing to do the work you do with the DoD and any other customers you may be supporting. All the best. Thank you.